We've been told time and time again that generative models like GPT 5.5 are basically the end of human creativity, that the machines have finally, officially won. But what if I told you we've actually discovered the one glaring glitch that the algorithms simply can't patch? I'm talking about the pure, unfiltered messiness of human reality. So today, we're taking the world's most advanced synthetic intelligence and putting it through a high-stakes psychological experiment. We really want to see if it can actually understand us.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. So it's May 2026, and we're looking at a pretty wild landscape out there. Look, advanced models have undeniably mastered multi-step logic, coding, and pumping out massive amounts of text. But as you'll see today, when you pit perfect algorithmic generation right up against the nonlinear, completely subjective intuition of a human being, something incredibly interesting happens. The machine just kind of hits a brick wall.
Which brings us to Section 1, the Great Logic Wall, flawless output versus sterile probability. To really get why this happens, we first have to look at this concept called the Great Logic Wall. Basically, this is the invisible barrier where flawless, perfectly structured output just completely fails to capture genuine human emotion. See, AI systems optimize for probability. They're looking at literally billions of data points just to generate the statistically most plausible response. It's all about consensus, safety, and predictability. But humans, we optimize for meaning. And honestly, the most emotionally powerful moments in our lives are usually entirely illogical. They involve massive risk. They involve choosing dignity over efficiency or breaking the rules just to protect someone. AI solves puzzles by cleanly recombining its training data. But us, we navigate complex real-world dilemmas through embodied cognition. We have physical stakes, we have actual fears, and we have lived experiences.
And this brilliantly illustrates the resulting problem we're seeing literally everywhere right now, which is synthetic blandness. Because AI is aiming for this mathematical average of acceptable content, it naturally tends to just remove all the friction. It strips away the weirdness, the sharp perspective, and those uncomfortable truths. What you're left with is basically visual elevator music. Sure, it's technically perfect, but emotionally, it's completely forgettable. It just lacks that spark that actually makes us care.
Moving on to Section 2, the subtext test, literal processing versus emotional depth. Let's walk through a pretty high-stakes scenario. I like to call this the breakup test. Imagine someone looks away, crosses their arms, and says, "I'm fine." Now, if you feed that exact phrase into a language model, the literal interpretation is super straightforward. The subject is okay, they're functioning normally. But literally any human in the room instantly knows the subtext there. You hear the tense tone, you immediately notice the lack of eye contact. The actual meaning is, I am hurt, I am tense, and I really want you to notice without forcing me to say it out loud. AI just totally misses the sarcasm, the irony, and that really heavy silence between the notes. There's this quote I absolutely love. Machines hear the sentence. Humans hear the hesitation. This perfectly captures the fact that in real, everyday conversation, the literal words we speak are honestly only about 30% of the meaning. The rest of the whole shebang is tension, implication, and emotional architecture. The AI processes the language, absolutely, but we humans process the tension. Next up is Section 3, cultural friction and locality, the global average versus the local wound. Now, what's really interesting here is how this reveals the invisible weight of history. Let's look at what we can call the grandma test. Imagine a grandmother tells her family, "We don't waste food." To an algorithm, this is just a practical dietary or economic rule, right? Makes sense. But to her family and to a human listener who understands her context, that sentence is completely packed with generational subtext. It might carry the deep memory of famine, the trauma of war, or a really ingrained scarcity psychology. The algorithm sees a sentence, we actually hear history. You see, culture is basically compressed emotion. It's made up of all these invisible rules. We're talking shared memory, hyperlocal trauma, inside jokes that literally only your specific neighborhood gets, regional rhythms, and totally unspoken social hierarchies. You just cannot mathematically extract this stuff from global consensus patterns. Authentic cultural understanding requires lived participation. It requires suffering and memory, things a machine simply does not possess. No way around it. Which takes us to Section 4, the power of messy creativity, breaking the pattern. Think about the most revolutionary art forms we have for a second. Punk music, surrealism, experimental stand-up comedy, even internet meme culture. All of these rely on intentionally breaking the rhythm. They ignore established structure, they create awkward discomfort, and they openly challenge what the general consensus says is correct. AI is explicitly designed to converge on recognizable structure. But human brilliance, it often creates its deepest, most profound meaning through pure chaos. We are deliberately weird, and that weirdness is exactly what an algorithm is programmed to avoid at all costs. All right, let's get into Section 5, the strategic human bottleneck, curators of meaning in 2026. So the crucial point here is this massive economic shift we are currently living through. Because of AI, certain things have obviously become incredibly cheap and abundant, generating content, formatting information, applying templates, spitting out generic visuals, all practically free. But look at what has become highly expensive and premium: taste, trust, deep emotional resonance, an original worldview. In a sea of endless automated perfection, our human imperfection and unique perspective have quite literally become luxury assets. And because of this, we're actually seeing specific roles absolutely thriving right now in this AI-saturated environment. Brand strategists, creative directors, therapists, UX researchers, and community-driven creators. And why is that? Well, because these roles require real, genuine empathy. They require emotional strategy, the ability to read the room, an understanding of cultural subtext, and building parasocial trust. Algorithms are fantastic co-pilots for ideation, sure, but they cannot fake the deep human connection that these roles demand. Actually, let me break the fourth wall for just a second and ask you directly. Do you value authentic, human-curated meaning? If you want to join the human advantage and show that you value real, chaotic, emotional depth over synthetic blandness, then prove it right now. Hit that like button on this explainer and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Seriously, by doing that, you're literally telling the algorithms that human perspective is exactly what you want to see more of. Let's move to and see how this builds into a totally practical roadmap for your own life and career. How do you actually exploit this human bottleneck? Well, step 1, absolutely use AI for efficiency, for research, and for drafting. Let it do the heavy lifting for sure. Step 2, double down on your lived experience. Your specific history is your personal moat. Step 3, curate ruthlessly. Edit out all of that synthetic blandness. And finally, step 4, focus on high-stakes subtext. Start telling stories that have actual tension, unstated emotion, and hyperlocal relevance. I want to leave you with this final lingering thought. As we navigate 2026 and whatever comes next, the machines are definitely going to get faster. They're going to get smarter, and they will master pretty much every logic puzzle we throw at them. But they will never, ever truly inhabit the human experience. The future may belong to AI systems, but meaning still belongs to humans. So embrace your emotional chaos, trust your messy creativity, and keep breaking those patterns. Thanks so much for watching.